What's up, Final Community? Cliff the Final Cheapskate here. We may get some extra noise. My son's playing a video game behind me. So, if you hear him complaining, that's going to be why. He's getting beat in a video game. Anyway, welcome to another Friday Drinking Music. Today I'm gonna do a special video. This is a video where I'm not gonna show a lot of obscure stuff. This isn't vinyl finds or anything. This is all just records from bands that I love. That these aren't considered their best records, but they're still solid, really good records. So that's the angle I came at. And I got the idea because I was listening to this album, which I love. I love this album. And it's Motorhead's Rock and Roll. This is a great album. I don't know many people that consider this their best album, but I think it's a great album. I could listen to it all the time. It's got a lot more like stompy rock and roll bits and kind of mid-paced. It's got Wurzel and Filthy Animal Taylor, Philip Campbell, second guitarist, and, good stuff. But really great tunes on this too. Rock and Roll, Eat the Rich, Stone Deaf in the USA is really good. The Wolf, Traitor, Dogs. I think this is an excellent album. This is definitely a standout for the Motorhead stuff. Typically everybody, the best Motorhead albums are either Ace of Spades or Overkill. I think this can stand up right there with them. It's different, not the same record, but still really good. But yeah, I was listening to that record, and that's where this idea came from. I'm like, man, this record is really, really good, really solid. And it made me go through and think, what other albums do I think are good, but aren't really ever considered the best albums? So another one, and this may be a controversial one. Point of Entry by Judas Priest. I'm of the mindset that every Judas Priest album is pretty much a great album. This one's got some standout tracks, but it's not one that is all bangers. I'd even say Turbo is one that I think is all bangers, but a lot of people would disagree with me. This one's a little spottier. But yeah, like Heading Out on the Highway is the opener. So it's a great song. Hot Rockin's a pretty good song. But yeah, not the best of theirs, but still a solid album. I can still listen to this all the way through. But I don't think anybody ever shows it because it's kind of not their best. When you think of the best Priests, my favorite's Sin After Sin, and that might even be one that people won't consider their best all the time. But it's a great album. Usually I'll think Hellbent for Leather or Stained Class are probably considered their best albums for a lot of people. But yeah, I think that Judas Priest, all their albums are pretty freaking good. Next up, and there's a reason that most of these bands are in here. The bands that I picked are all, they're all bands that I consider one of my favorite bands. Next up, I'm going to go Thin Lizzy. Shades of the Blue Orphanage. It's just not their best album. I like Fighters as my favorite. Or Fighters. Fighting is my favorite. But this is early on. This is what... I feel like this is before Thin Lizzy really kind of knew what they were going for. This is a solid like blues rocky, kind of psyche blues rocky album, and it didn't really dive too hard into like the harder rock stuff that they would eventually do with the dueling guitars and all that. This is them when they were a trio. When did this come out? 72. But with all its shortcomings, I still think this is a solid album. You can hear the potential coming out of this one, and it really starts to... It's before they really came into their own, but you hear them starting to come into their own. And really solid stuff. Thin Lizzy probably has one of the greatest catalogs, for me at least, of any band ever. Love me some Thin Lizzy. So, not a knock on this album at all. I just don't think this is considered one of their best, and I don't think it's one of their best. But it's still, like I said, solid album all the way through. Next up, another one of my favorites, T-Rex, Dandy in the Underworld. Again, just this one's stacked too. This is it's almost a perfect record. It really is. Teenage Riot Structure, Dandy in the Underworld, Universe, I'm a Fool for You Girl, all great songs. Definitely a great album, but it doesn't have the hits of Electric Warrior, and it doesn't have the just solid writing of Slider, but it's still excellent album. This is probably my third favorite. I would venture to say this might be my third favorite T-Rex album. It's after the two albums I just talked about, so it's still got the heavy rock in there. It's still got great songwriting. It still has that kind of throwback feel that you get from T-Rex in those other two albums. It's just doesn't have the hit power of those two albums, I don't think. But it's still a great record. Great rock band. You should all know who T-Rex is, but Dandy in the Underworld, I think that's another one where it's like my third favorite album by them. Next up, we're going to go crusty. We're going to go real crusty. Darker Days Ahead by Tragedy. Darker Days Ahead is the last Tragedy album before they broke up. And you can hear in this that they're trying to go a little more in like a metallic direction. And you know that later on, I know that later on that Todd from this band went on and formed Nightfell. And that's another great band, Nightfell. Tragedy is one of my favorite bands ever. And I think that this album has worked its way up from being like, one of my least favorites. So this is one that I reach for more often than not because I've heard their self-titled In Vengeance so many times. This will probably be the one that I'd reach for because I haven't spun it as much. In the early 2000s, Tragedy was on constantly when I was growing up, and this was one that was after my time. Like I remember I went to the record store and I went in and I didn't even realize Tragedy had a new album, and I saw this and I picked it up instantly. This came out in 2010, I think. I believe it was 2010. 2011. It was recorded in 2011. So yeah, this was like I think I went to the record store like 2 years after my son was born, and I went and picked this up. And I found this, and it surprised me. How metal they got really surprised me. But yeah, this is a great record. right. Next up, again, like I said, album that I think is a great album, but not really considered their best. Candlemass, Tales of Creation. I mean, it's got great songs like The Prophecy, Under the Oak, Into the Unfathomed Tower, The Edge of Heaven, and The Tale of Creation. It's got all those great songs. I don't know, maybe some people might consider this their best album, but most of the time it's Doomicus, Epicus, Metallicus, or Nightfall are usually considered their top tier records. But this record, I think, is just as good as those for the most part. I don't know, these early Messiah albums, I really love all the Messiah Candlemass albums, so I'm kind of a sucker for those. But yeah, Candlemass, Tales of Creation, number, I don't know, 4 from this 10 records that are good but not their best. I think that's what I'm going to call this video, good but not their best. Next up, one that has grown on me. Wipers. The Power in One. This is later Wipers. This came out in like 98, I think. But this was one of the later Wipers albums. And I think it kind of got overlooked. Oh, it came out in 99. I think it got kind of overlooked because it came out so late. Yeah, it says recorded in 1998. And the Wipers were really not as active then. They were active like all through the 90s and really active in the late 80s, early 90s. So this one kind of got overlooked, but it's got solid songs all the way through, and really great guitar work. Greg Sage is in top form on this one, I think. And another one that gets looked over, Wipers, Power in One. Now again, that is no what the hell is it called? I can't remember any of their album name. It's no Youth of America or anything like that, but it's still a great record. Now, this one goes real low on people's lists, I think, of their records in the order that they take them out in. But that's Manila Road, The Courts of Chaos. Another one that's a later one. I think this one came out in... I gotta do homework before I do these sometimes. Yeah, this was 1990, so it was like way late in Manila Road's career, but still solid stuff. This is a High Roller reissue, and High Roller does a great job on their reissues. And this is before, Mark Shelton was a great metal god, really. All of Manila Road. It's not anywhere as good as, even it's not even as good as like Mystification, but this is still a great record. Solid riffs throughout. It's got some keyboard in it. I think that kind of turns some people off, but really excellent record. Love this record too. Next, Immortals, Northern Chaos Gods. This record, I think, this is another one where it's solid all the way through. Doesn't hang with the earlier stuff. Really doesn't. But it's still a great black metal record. This is after Abath had left the band. This is just Demonaz on guitar and Horg on drums. So kind of bare bones, scaling it back a bit. Still some really good guitar work on there, but I gotta say that, like, I think that Abath is the better guitarist between Demonez and Abath. Sorry, somebody might disagree with me, but I don't think they really can. Uh, the Demonez stuff that was the early few albums, that's unfuckwithable. It really is. But the stuff that was like where Bath kind of took over a little more, like Damned in Black and uh, at the Heart of Winter, like, and the like that stuff is freaking awesome. I can't lie, but this album really surprised me because I was like, wow, an Immortal album without Abath, is it going to be any good? You know what? It's solid record. Solid record. So kudos to Immortal keeping it going. They put out a new one in 2023, and that one was pretty good. It wasn't as good as this one, but it was pretty good, and I bought it and I enjoyed it. So check that one out too. But yeah, that's what I got for you guys this week. Thanks for checking out my Friday drinking music. And I hope everybody has a good weekend. Oh, and one more. Don't forget. This Slayer from Celtic Frost, Cold Lake. I don't care what anybody says. I think Cold Lake is a pretty fun, decent little ride. Far from a great record, but it is a good record, and I like it. Anyway, cheers, everybody.